Exams don't just test your ability to retain content and regurgitate it. They test your ability to take an exam. That sounds really weird. What do you mean an exam is assessing my ability to take an exam? Well, you can know all of the content inside out, back to front, be able to recite every single word on the specification and still not get top grades. That's because exam technique and exam strategy is so fundamental to being able to get top grades, and too many students only realise this at the end of the exam period. But you're going to realise it at the beginning, because I'm going to take you through some steps that you can take to maximise your marks in any exam that you're taking. These will work no matter whether you're doing GCSEs, A-level, university exams. They are fundamental principles that you can integrate into your revision process, into the way that you sit exams, into what you do before and after to make sure that you are getting the maximum possible marks. That's enough with the waffle, let's get straight into it. First of all, you need to know that answering the question is more important than knowing the answer. What's the difference here? Well, if you don't read the question fully enough, you're going to be answering what you think is the question and giving probably an excellent answer. But if it is not directly addressing the exact nuanced point that that question wants you to hit, you're not going to get the marks. And you might think that is only relevant for subjects like geography, like history, like English, but it's actually really relevant in things like biology, chemistry, and physics, because students will, no matter the subject, see the question, kind of see a couple of keywords, go, oh, I know exactly what this is asking me about, and start writing their response. And then when they go back and check, they're checking what they think the question was, and checking that they wrote an answer to that thought-proposed question. That might not be actually what the question is asking you to do. So the way that you're going to make sure that you don't fall into this trap is you're not going to pick up your pen the first time you read the question. You're going to literally put your pencil down, read the question, pick it back up again, and then underline the keywords throughout the entire question, no matter whether this question is one line long or takes up an entire page. You want to make sure that you're going to be focused and actually answering what you're going to be rewarded for. Otherwise, you're wasting good work, you're wasting time in the exam, and it means that your revision wasn't actually that beneficial to you because you're not using it in the best way possible. Tied on to that, make sure that you are never just brain dumping in a question unless you have quite literally zero idea what it is asking you to do. Because as I say, writing something is better than writing nothing, but writing something tailored is always going to be better than just blurting down everything you can. So make sure you're paying attention to keywords like evaluate, to what extent. Because if you're getting something like to what extent, it is genuinely asking you to what extent. What are the caveats that would prevent your certain perspective holding true all of the time, for example, is a really nuanced way to answer that will always get you top band mark. You also want to be having these pre-thought out structures as to how you're going to respond to questions in your head, because this is going to make it so much easier whether you're going in for an essay or a longer mark question in a subject like maths, physics, chemistry, whatever it is. Obviously, the Peel structure is something that is probably ingrained in your brain, and that is a very useful baseline to have. You could tailor it, have something more like the Victor structure for English literature. That would work very, very well. Things that people don't talk about so much are things like, for sciences, the T structure, which is technique, evidence, effect. So that can also work for English literature, obviously. But in the context of science, that can be very good in terms of like, what are you actually using? Okay, is there an equation you can talk about? What is the actual real world effect of what you're going on about? And then similarly, if you're going for the short explain answers, there's this very interesting technique, it's called ABC, which stands for answer, back it up, and connect to the question. You can see how that can be relevant for these shorter answer questions. But just having these structures in your brain means that you're not wasting mental energy on thinking, how am I going to respond to it? But you're using all of your energy thinking, okay, what do I know that will allow me to respond to it? Because you already know the structure that you're going to use. Then too many students, and I've already had messages this exam season from people saying, oh, I've done this and I'm really annoyed by it. Like, if it happens, it happens, but you're going to try and avoid running out of time. And that can very easily be done because you feel like you've got to focus on your question, you're getting towards the answer, but the longer you spend on one question, the bigger the sacrifice you're making in not moving on to the next question. So how to get around that is, before you go into an exam, think about timings. What are the ideal timings for this paper? Have them in your head. Once you get into that exam room, you basically want to be doing a mark a minute. Obviously that differs for certain subjects, but for the vast majority of them, it's a mark a minute. So get into the exam room, go flick to your question, look at how many marks it is, write that by the question, and as soon as that is up on the clock, move on. Of course, if you're finishing off the last section of that question, you can stay on it for a bit longer, but it's a really useful mental heuristic that will allow you to move on and actually complete more of the questions, because if you get to the end of it and you have a bit of time, you can go back. You can finish some of those questions that you had to leave early. But you'd rather have started other questions, because generally, particularly in multi-part questions that you get like in maths or in science, the start of a question is easier than the end of a question. So by focusing on question 2, part D for ages and ages, you're missing out on the really easy bits of question 3, question 4, question 5. And you don't want to be sacrificing that, because those are marks that you could easily pick up. You also want to be thinking about what the examiners are actually going to reward you for. So in any piece of extended writing across all exam boards, what they are looking for is knowledge, understanding, and analysis. Those are going to be your 3 assessment objectives for quite literally any extended piece of writing that you do. So you've got to showcase all 3 of those assessment objectives, including an assessment objective number 4, which is context in certain situations like English literature, or spelling, punctuation, and grammar, considering that as well in English language. So you've got to be focusing, because if you're not hitting every single one of these points, you're capping your ability to get into the top band, because in the top band for every extended piece of writing, you need to be hitting all of the assessment objectives. So just have those in the forefront of your mind. And if you're thinking, what are my assessment objectives? I've never heard of these. Quite literally go to the specification of whatever subject you're sitting, whatever paper you're doing, and it'll say somewhere near the top of the specification, these are the assessment objectives, with very detailed summaries of what they mean and how examiners are going to be rewarding them. Now, if you get to a question and you're just really not sure, writing down something is going to get you marks. Writing down nothing is not going to get you marks. Sometimes writing down something still won't get you marks, but you've got a chance of having marks. Whereas if you write nothing, the only mark you can possibly get is 0. So be smart. If you're stuck in a multiple choice question, try and think about what you can practically eliminate that makes sense, that, what answers are just definitely not the case, and then pick one out of that. If it's a longer answer question, write down whatever you do know. Write down a couple of facts. Think about how you could play. Are there any definitions that you could write down? Could you play around with the numbers a little bit? Whatever you could do to just put something in the space is always going to give you a better chance of getting high marks than if you're sat there and putting absolutely nothing down. If you're really, really stuck, even just turn the question into a statement. Just change it around a little bit, and perhaps even just doing that will trigger your memory and get you to think, oh, you know what, I could write this down. If you're the kind of student who feels like you always forget in an exam, it's not because you didn't revise. 90% of the time, it comes down to stress or bad conditions. And the way that you can remedy that is, if you're feeling just stressed, worked up, your mind is going at 100 miles an hour, you're thinking, oh my god, I don't know this, I don't know that, my friend said this, oh my god, what if this comes up? You just need to take a bit of a moment, and I'm sure you would have been taught this in PSHE and not listened to it once, and I was taught it in PSHE, never listened to it, and then panicked in an exam and actually used it, and it really helped. And that's the box breathing idea, where you breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, hold it for 4. And the first time I did it, I felt a bit stupid, oh, it's a little box breathing method, how is this going to help? But genuinely, it does calm you, it regulates your breathing, it brings your heart rate down, it makes you in a better position to be taking an exam and to be answering all of the questions to the best of your ability. And second to that, always bring a water bottle with you. Please always bring a water bottle with you. I'm not a massive drinker of water, or at least I wasn't then. I did purchase, as one can see on my desk over here, a wonderful Stanley bottle last term, and it has not left my side ever since. But prior to that, I didn't really drink that much during the day, but I would always bring a water bottle with me to an exam, is the point that I'm trying to make, because you can think, oh, I'm not going to need it, but then in that one exam where you do need it and then it starts distracting you, you get brain fog from being dehydrated. No, that is not going to happen. Do not allow that to happen. Read the question, plan the structure, write to the mark scheme, manage your time, stay calm, and you've got this.